Very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. Just to remind Bukola, 25 days is down the line, the month of February, and we are here again. Beautiful morning to you. And Jeffrey Uzoma. Bukola.
Good morning. Welcome to your perfect morning starter right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Kuka.
It's a Tuesday morning, just in case you're wondering. And we're live for you here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikule.
So, Bukola, what have you been tracking? Just to remind you, today is Tuesday.
It's pleasant to note that there's now a groundswell of support rather than opposition to the tax reform bills, and those who have concerns have identified the concerns, and we're moving forward with the tax reform bills, and we hope that there's a consensus when the public hearing continues from all stakeholders, such that we can now proceed with a bright future as far as revenue generation is concerned to the subnationals and, of course, the entire part of the country. So, well, it's a good way to start off the week.
Mine is pretty simple. I'm happy the reform bill is making progress. Whatever annotation has to be done for it to be perfect, this is the time to do all of those annotations, because it's a big piece of legislation that's going to govern our tax system in the future. So it's important that everybody contributes. So if you're close to the nation's capital, or if you're a major stakeholder, it's now the time is now to be able to contribute your quota and contribute your own little idea into how to affect it. But this is what it should also do for all of us. If you've never held government to account, where you're is it gone now? Gone will be extreme. Just be as hold the government accountable like never before, because now they are coming for our monies to make sure that they use this money to deliver some of the dividend of democracy. Guys, I was looking at, apparently they have migrated me from Ban B to Ban A.
Wow.
I should not be clapping.
Congratulations.
So what used to, so before now, if you use 100,000 naira to buy, you get you, let me use the layman's term, it gets you about 1,400 and something units, whatever it's called. Now with 100,000, that could take you for like almost 3 months. Now with that same 100,000, it's about 440 something units.
Wow.
So I just remind the government that.
And what's the duration during which you use that? So
when I did my calculation, apparently that should take you for about a month instead of 3 months. So when we hold government to account, when we're not looking back and holding, we're making sacrifices as a people, huge sacrifices. So you now pay more. So by simple calculation of mathematics, it showed that the bill has increased by over 300%, but the units applied to you has also reduced by over 300%. Yeah. So at the end of the day, government, you will be held accountable, whether you like it or not, whether you are comfortable with it or not. You don't have a choice. You will be held accountable. Businesses are sacrificing. Individuals are sacrificing. People are losing jobs and lives and closing down because people are just trying to bear, because you made a promise. Ibrahim Babangida made the same promise. Bola Tinubu has come back as president, is now president, is making the same promise. You will be held accountable, and you must account for every penny we spend and every sacrifice we give.
Absolutely.
There's no way out of this. And
I think this cuts across, but I look at some of these issues sometimes, and I just say, these are just symptoms of a bigger or deeper issue, right? So if you want to buy a high-end vehicle, for example, you know how much it costs. It's global. Whether you're in Nigeria or you're in Ghana or you're in the UK, you want to buy one of those vehicles, you're spending $100,000. That is a price. Why? You see, because people sat down in their own, maybe an individual or a group of people, and said, let us produce this vehicle. So they brought raw materials together, a lot of them maybe locally sourced. They produced that vehicle, and they looked at the manpower, they looked at all of the resources and put a price to it. So you buying it cannot say, why is it that price? No, if you're not buying, go. So a lot of the things we consume, electricity, for example, well, some say that is the price, that's the cost, that is how much it costs to generate power. A lot of these things, I'm talking the equipment, I mean, we don't produce them locally here. So it's a conversation that we should sit down to have. How can we, as a nation, I mean, we've been using mobile phones, Jeffrey and Bukola, for almost 30 years now, and I'm not sure anybody sat down to say, can we start producing mobile phones locally? I don't know if we've ever had that conversation that succeeded. People have tried it here and there, but we're not able to produce a mobile phone here in Nigeria.
We are producing, but we're not producing quality that is as competitive as what you would rather buy.
I'm sorry, what Nigerians
who's
producing buy. Who's producing a mobile phone in Nigeria? I didn't say GSM. So. I didn't say GSM. I said, who's producing a mobile phone in Nigeria?
They're not as good as the brands. I don't want to promote the brands that we prefer, but you know, there are some productions.
I didn't say we're assembling. We need to be, anyway, so I think that's a deeper conversation, really. But I'm tracking two things. One, the health of the Pope. You know, thousands have gathered at the Vatican, pray for his health in critical condition. So we're tracking that definitely. I'll be bringing you updates, as well as the, you know, the negotiations with Russia. You know, America saying that Zelensky doesn't have a card. That really hurts, but it is just what it is, really. Those are two things I'm tracking, yes.
All right, guys, so what are we doing today on the program? We'll get straight to the business of the day and the facts. Okay, we'll get to that very first one, which is a 2 or 3 day public hearing on the tax reform bill. All of the big bills, the tax reform, there are 4 bills in total. Please get yourself acquainted with it. If you haven't, maybe we'll do a little bit to contribute to maybe your knowledge base, to tell you what these bills are, what you stand to gain or lose, or benefit, if you will, or you should be ready to pay as far as these bills are concerned. But the reforms are in the right direction, just to tweak a few things here and there, and you may not have a perfect legislation. We'll bring the experts to break it down for us right here on the program.
Besides that, we'll also be speaking with experienced planning manager Anthony Onwodi as we seek to understand the importance of supply chain management in today's fast-paced economy.
Then we head over to Benue State, oh yes, where the State House of Assembly continues to be divided over the controversy surrounding the status of the state's chief judge. We'll be taking a look at the legal and political implications, as well as implications for democracy and rule of law in Nigeria. Don't forget the civil security bit playing out in Benue State as well.
There's a lot as far as that's concerned, other issues concerned. And finally, from despair to triumph, we follow the inspiring journey of Mohammed Haruna Hamza, a young Nigerian who, after being displaced from his home in Yobe State by the Boko Haram insurgents, defied the odds to earn a master's degree in aerospace engineering in South Korea on the fully funded scholarship. These are the kinds of stories we love. We will tell the story right here using this guy as our case study.
Yeah, from displacement to upliftment.
Oh, I like that.
An interesting journey. Okay, so from there, we head out straight to the papers. Let's see what the papers are saying this morning, this beautiful Tuesday morning. And The Guardian is a good place to start. Look at the front page of The Guardian. It leads with an interesting one: 53,225 pre-trial detainees languish in jail despite push to pardon politicians. And, you know, there's a very vivid image there of one in chains, well, in detention. And you see the breakdown of the story that The Guardian is putting out from different parts of the country. You see below there, awaiting trial in Port Harcourt, 1,810. In Enugu, there's 2,290. Kuje, that's in the FCT, 768. Suleja, 190. Lagos, a whopping 6,629 are awaiting trial. And, you know, as far as Nigeria's inmates are concerned, there's a whole gamut of issues, from their welfare to, you know, the congestion, to the conditions of the prisons, and the number awaiting trial. And, you know, again, we re-emphasize the position expressed by the Minister of Interior some time ago, that there's going to be a partnership with the private sector to, you know, sort of put together a system of release for those who are awaiting trial. We haven't quite heard updates on that one.
All right,
but that's a good story.
Let's bring in our analyst as well, Mr. Adeni Ifetayo, who is joining us via Zoom from London. Mr. Adeni, I'm sure you're seeing that headline. The Guardian has done a great job in breaking it down for us. What's your reaction? Pre-trial, incarcerated, just waiting.
Yes, I think the government should do better, especially the Minister of the Interior, when you are talking about prison decongestion and you have humongous thousands of people who are waiting trial. Maybe if you have to set up a committee made up of lawyers, NGOs, and all of that to look at it. If there are some that they can dispense justice immediately or make to face community service, or if it is a levy, they need to pay. Some they could not afford it. They've been there. I've had the cases that just because of 5,000 naira, they can't such individual cannot afford such money, and they are just being kept in the prison. Those are the things they should look at. And of course, this is taxpayer money going to something that will have been dispersed, within just few days. And our judges also, they should do more. If you need more workforce, government should do more, bring them in. And if you need more lawyers and all of that, in the Ministry of Justice and Department of Justice. And so they should do that. It's not a good thing that we have that humongous number of people, over 53,000, detaining, languishing in jail, waiting for trial. While if it has to do with politicians, somebody who knows somebody up there, they use what they call the pardon, that the government or the governor has pardoned this, has pardoned that. So they can look into that within a few weeks or months, and they can disperse justice and let them go. And those that need to face the trial or to serve their sentence should be made to do so.
All right, Vitayo, before we leave The Guardian, there's another one just beneath the main headlines where it says that Tinubu considers committee for fresh census. Some of us have said that if they are not using things like BVAS, we should just forget the census and just continue this assumption we do, because if we go the old way, it doesn't make any sense. At least we need to know how many we are by biometrics. What do you think, Vitayo?
Yes, of course. One of the problems of Nigeria or challenges is the issue of data. We don't know how many we have. We don't know who is doing what. So it's the same thing. If they are doing it the old way, it's just for them to waste money or just to enrich few of their political friends or whatever it is. But I think we should do it the better way so that we know how many we have, birth certificate, death certificate, who is in this particular geographical location, how many are we in this state, how many are they in that state. Those are the things so that you can work with numbers. But if you are just assuming or they want to do it the old way, it will just be an exercise in futility. So I just wish Mr. President will live up to billing and do it different way, because you can't continue to do the same thing the same way and expect different results. And when you have a data, it will help you when it comes to governance, when it comes to building infrastructure at any point in time. So thank God we are in the period of AI as it were now, and they can make use of technology so that we know how many we have at a particular state or at a particular geographical location and know what they need in terms of protecting life, primary health care facility, bringing government to the grassroots, etc., etc.
All right. Let's turn our attention now to the Nigerian Tribune. You see what's on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune is quite interesting. And it's from former governor of Benue State, Nasir El-Rufai. Take a look at what it says. APC has left me. It says Tinubu, not Senate, rejected his ministerial nomination. False implementation of president's economic policies. Hints at possibility of joining another political platform. Rules out PDP. A lot to unpack from that one, but it's captioned very simply. Like APC has left me. So he didn't say he has left the APC. It's the APC that has left him. How do you react to that, Mr. Ifetaya?
Yeah, first and foremost, I look at the story. He said he was giving Mr. President some condition because he was burnt out after serving Kaduna State for 8 years. I'm sure maybe Mr. President reconsider and say that if this man will serve in my government, and with all what he has told me, I think I should let him be. And, he has served, he was optimistic that he's going to be part of the government. And like he said, if you read that story that he said that it was not the Senate that rejected him, it was Mr. President that said, okay, he's no longer interested in him. But regardless, our politician, when it's not favorable to them, and that is when they begin to talk of joining another party where they can, achieve their aspiration. Like he said, APC has left him. And he also said that based on the fact that he's a founding member of APC, you still have the right to contribute or to say one or two things. And I just hope that they find a common ground, because politics is just a matter of numbers, who is on your side, as they call it, structure that you have. So I think he has done well. Like he said, he was a made man before he came into politics, not that he needed anything, but regardless, it happened, changes happen. Like that's their slogan, APC change. So whatever it is that happens to him, I think he should just bear it. After all, he said he's not looking for anything in the government.
But do you think he is strong enough to topple the plans, the second-term plans of this government? Do you think he can be? Yeah.
Just like I said, winning an election is a game of numbers. So how many numbers do you have? It might affect, but of course, a tree does not make a forest. And I'm sure some people are leaving, some people are coming in. So that's how it is in Nigeria here. Unlike in the Western world, when you are Democrat, you are Democrat for life, or when you are Republican, you are Republican for life. But it's not here. In Nigeria, it's a game of number. He has a role. Somebody who has served as a former minister, who has served with them as a governor, he has some structure, in his kitty. So I believe they can still make up and look at how they can compensate him, or since he said he's not looking for anything, I'm sure he can recommend somebody for something.
All right, let's go to, there are other stories there of interest, including what's going on with the PDP and all that. But let's go to this Nigeria, say census jinx. We must ascertain actual number of Nigerians, says Tinubu. Plans to align biometric digital component in population census. I would like you to speak to that briefly, Fetayo. But beneath that front page is the Osun story, where security operatives take over major roads and council secretariat. APC LG is interesting because we have on standby APC LG chairman and PDP LG chairman, but this is the APC LG chairman issuing 72-hour resumption deadline to the workers in the local government area.
Yes, I'll start with the last one. It's just sometimes they said judiciary is the last hope of the masses. Sometimes they create some problem when a lower court, high court was saying that there's a vacancy and the SEC, that the state INEC should go ahead to conduct election. And meanwhile, the Court of Appeal is saying that those people that were removed, it was unconstitutional, they should resume back. It created chaos where lives were lost, people were injured, and now you are forcing the workers to come to the. If you listen to the governor when he said that those that were elected based on the judgment of a high court, that they should stay clear of the local government council for now, and somebody saying that if those workers do not resume work, there's already tension until the court comes to define who is legitimate occupier of the local government and council in that state. I think they should maintain the status quo. Everybody should just stay on their own. So the judiciary need to come and interpret this for us. And of course, talking about the issue of censor, if you are not doing it digitally, if you are not putting IT into it, if you still want to do it manually, we are just joking, we are not ready.
Well, we can only hope for stability as far as Osun is concerned.
Yep.
So from this Nigeria, let's head out to Blueprint newspaper, which takes us right back to where we started off the program from this morning. And the big story is about the tax reform bills that have now begun to receive support from stakeholders. Take a look at the headline: NNPCL, IMAFC, Arewa think tank, others back tax reform bills. And you also have two riders there. ACF won 7.5% VAT retained, agri-equipment tax scrapped. And of course, the president's position is also expressed in the second rider: give me a workable law, Tinubu charges lawmakers. Now that there's a resolution over the distribution formula of the tax reform bills, do you see any other challenge that may be for the tax reform bills in the coming days when deliberations continue on the bills, Mr. Fetayo?
Yes. If you look at it, like for example, you have a company operating in Ogun State, and the headquarters is in Lagos, and that's where the tax is being paid. And where the operation of such company is based, they don't enjoy tax distribution in that place. Those are the things that tax reform, one of the things that tax reform set to correct. And the only challenges I might see is, for example, FCT, almost all the organizations, they have their headquarters, whatever. Even in Lagos, they have their headquarters. So there might be a kind of, taking the money back to where those companies have been. They have their operational base. There might be a kind of misunderstanding. But if I also want the government to be transparent about how much we are generating, how much they are spending on this, on ABCD or XYZ, so that the people will be interested. If you read that story further, there was a place, NSC, they were complaining that it's because of government, they are not being transparent. That's why when, Senate President said that only 30% of Nigerians pay tax. And NNPC responded by saying that when you are not transparent with what you had, how do you expect us to pay tax? I just felt that if government are transparent with the whole thing, people will cooperate with them. I don't see any serious fight back. It's just only I know so much people, or many people, are not paying their taxes. Of course, like somebody said that you cannot tax poverty, you can only tax wealth. It's somebody who is okay, who has been able to have an enabling environment, business thriving, that can say, okay, let me do my responsibility, my civic responsibility, let me perform my civic responsibility. So government should make an enabling environment, not just about collecting money, but make an even distribution so that people have a sense of belonging. So that's just the only thing that I can see in the whole thing. But it's a good thing and it's a welcome idea. And for Mr. President saying, give me a workable tax reform, I'm sure he has a good things that can help him achieve his change agenda, or whatever hope agenda, as it were.
I guess that's why Ariwa is also saying that let's deploy technology to ensure efficient collection system of the taxes to be collected. And I also hope that this puts to rest the contentions from the subnationals over whose right it is between the federal and state government to collect the taxes. But that does it really this morning for the newspaper review. Thank you so much, Mr. Adeni Ifeta, media analyst, for joining us on this newspaper review segment. We always look forward to your contributions to what the papers are saying.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here once again.
All right, from here now, we'll take a break, but don't forget that you can also be a part of the program. Just send us your contributions, your messages. You can talk to us through X and also on our Hand of Fellowship, our WhatsApp number. Send us your questions, your concerns, and of course, we'll be ready to amplify them. We'll take a break now. When we return, the conversations will begin unfolding. So stay with us, we'll be right back.
Welcome back. Let's now talk about the tax reform bill and how inclusive or not it is, because the bill has actually scaled second reading, is now at the public hearing stage, which will make its way back to the National Assembly for more legislative work before it will be passed and assented to by the president, who is eagerly looking forward to putting his signature on that very reformative bill, if you will. We've been joined in the program to break it down for us from their perspective, what they expect, what's the content, as far as this bill is concerned. The Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Disability, member representing Oshodi Solo Federal Constituency 1, the House of Reps, Honorable Bashiru Daudu. Also joining us is the CEO and founder of TAF Africa, Mr. Jacob Pele, who is joining us virtually from Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Daudu, let's begin with you. We're now at this particular public hearing stage, but would you say that the progress that has been made so far with this bill juxtaposing that with issues around disability and all of that is because of the quote-unquote the intervention of the Governors Forum on what they would love to see in the bill, and that is why we're here where we are now?
I think that this is actually a teachable moment, you know, for Nigerians to see how bills are made by the National Assembly. It's taken its natural course. What it means is that the executive presents a bill, and this is deliberated in the House. Like you said, there's been readings, and it's now being referred to public hearing, which we are dedicating a couple of days to deal aggressively with that. So after the deliberations, of course, there will be input from civil society for amendments in the House. Then it's going to go to vote. Eventually, when it's passed, it's signed by the President. So it's important for our folks to know that this is a normal process. Having said that, from our own perspective in the disability community, we think that the current bill has gaps which do not address the concerns of persons with disability. We also think that the reform still needs to be tweaked here and there, and that is the whole essence of doing a public hearing and amendments. The way we're looking at it is that we know that there are over 35 million Nigerians who are persons with disability, and we think that the situation deserves very specific and unique special situations. What does this mean? That means that we are looking at this reform in terms of how does the government, you know, treat its vulnerable people. So, which means we will address it in terms of tax relief as well as tax incentives. So that's my overview of that. It's inclusive enough. I think this process is going to make it more inclusive. That is my answer to your question. Thank you.
All right, Honorable Dauda, just to put those figures in context yet again, the 35 million people living with disability in Nigeria, can you give us a spectrum? Because when people hear disability sometimes, what comes to mind is quite different. So give us a spectrum of you know, the disabilities captured in that 35 million. Then we'll, of course, push it to other things, but I wanted to situate that data properly for people.
Yeah, that's actually very important. Thank you very much, because this is one of the opportunities to have more awareness. You know, it also helps us to make our folks to be aware of the disability law. Yes, disability has clusters, but significantly, if you are certified as a person with disability by a doctor, and then you get a disability certificate, and you are captured in the data. The data is an ongoing thing. That is also relevant from your previous discussion about identification, because we're also interested in that persons with disability are captured, so we can have accurate data. Now, disability has clusters. So we have the visually impaired, we have the physical challenge, we have intellectual disability, and so on and so forth. That is the way we will look at it broadly, so that our folks can understand that that's what you mean. We're talking about, some people will even say that we're more than 35 million in the disability community. But because a lot of our folks, the persons with disability, live in rural areas, and they are sometimes hard to capture. That is part of what this process is going to enable us to do. Yes, it can be challenging putting into clusters, but that is an effort that the community is trying to do so we can have a more accurate data. Thank you for the question.
All right, great. So let's speak to some of the other intricacies. And this conversation is meant to make a case for the people that most times are sort of forgotten. You just pay attention to, oh, okay, this is majority, what the majority is saying, but you forget that there's actually another majority in the seeming minority in that sense. But there have been thorny issues with this tax bill, and I wonder for you, first, where your own issues, where they stand in the ratings of what's most important, right? And sitting through that, the public hearing, what could you glean? Did you glean that this will be an easy sale, or will be a very tough one for us to agree on as a nation?
Yeah, I think the act of making a bill is usually challenging. This is not unusual. It was just that we needed to be a little more patient to get to this point. But getting to this point now, we can see that it's going to take its natural course, which means that Nigerians will be able to come to the public hearing and present the input. And the bill is actually going to be better. Would you say what has been presented is perfect? No. Actually, there's no a perfect bill. From the perspective of inclusion, we think because of the unique situation of the disability community, we should look at on a case-by-case basis. What do I mean by that? For example, in terms of tax relief, we think if you're a person with disability that you are earning an income that is less than 1 million, that you should be tax exempt. We think if you're over 1 million, it should be as low as 5%. We think that for VAT, if you're a PWD or you are doing business in that area, that there should be some VAT exemptions. For example, accessibility equipment, we think that those kind of products should be tax exempt. In terms of tax credit, we think businesses that are retrofitting, that are making their environment more accessible to PWDs, should have credits in that area. We think that if you're employing more persons with disability and going by the law, you should have some tax credits. So those are some of the areas that we think there are gaps, and we intend to make the bill stronger. Thank you for the question.
So, Mr. Pele, borrowing from what the Honorable has said, what are your own propositions that you think should also be advanced at as the public hearing commences to ensure inclusion in the legislation, such that the persons with disability can also be fully represented?
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Honorable Dauda, our able chairman, for your very clear and precise thought. There are obvious gaps, and I have engaged the chairman directly, Professor Oyewole, and I think public servants should borrow a leaf from Professor Oyewole. His attitude towards engagement, his listening ears, his willingness to take action and proactive action. I say that to say that I had engaged him personally, directly, in his official capacity, and we looked at the issues surrounding inclusion as it relates to the tax reform bill. And he agreed with me that there are gaps. He didn't mince words to say, look, when we're doing this thing, we try to engage, but it looks like we didn't accurately engage the people that can guide us perfectly so that we can enshrine inclusive elements in the bill. And so that conversation resulted into what is happening today. Professor Oyewole is engaging the community of persons with disability directly in a town hall meeting. And in that town hall meeting, we will engage him. It's almost like a media house town hall meeting. We will stand up with him and ask him questions around what he's done. And then he will provide answers to those questions. When we are done with that, we are bringing experts. Bless the heart of Femi Falana. I was shocked when he met me in Lagos just on Friday and just drag me by the clothes and say, Jake, I want to support the work you do. There are a lot of things in the Disability Act that I can interpret. And graciously, he agreed to come in that town hall meeting and talk to us on tax laws and as it affects the most vulnerable. The Minister for Humanitarian, Professor Nentewe, will also be at the event. These are people who are very passionate about disability matters. And we see that opportunity to engage not only the chairman, but the entire committee and show them the gaps. Now, what are the gaps? One, you know the complexities of, filling out tax papers, and even though they're going to be online, even online, if you don't provide accessible format, the persons with disability will not participate. Not only some of us are asking for tax incentives and rebate, however, there are also some of us who can pay tax. I pay tax. So how do we access the portal so that it will be accessible to the blind, to the deaf, to persons with albinism, and so on and so forth? So you're talking about that. You're also talking about the private sector and the distribution of this tax, the dividends of this tax. How will the person with disability benefit from the tax incentives and all the tax, the various elements of that tax that will go to the most vulnerable? How do we benefit from it? How can they know who should benefit from it if they don't engage the community? So these are some of the things we want to do. Now, the highlight of this is that we will produce a recommendation that will be handed over to Professor Yowole, and we carry the same recommendation to the public hearing and hand it over to the lawmakers. Beside the recommendation, Dr. Dauda, who is doing an amazing job. I think this is the best chairman of disability community we've ever had, disability committee we've ever had. Now, he on the sideline are looking at the laws and following the processes by which he can submit it to his colleague, and it will be enshrined in the laws at the end of the day. Because sometimes public hearing, yes, recommendation, yes, they don't take those things serious. But when you put it in the language that they understand and ensure that the clauses meet their required standard, then it will be admitted as part of the document. This is some of the things that we're doing. We are looking at...
Just a moment before I let you go. So you said a couple of things. Besides the ease of being able to fill out forms and all of that, and ahead of the perhaps private or public hearing that the committee may do with persons with disability that will have some of these distinguished personalities you've called. What other provisions, maybe you can share with the public, besides exemptions, that you think that should be included, which is perhaps my colleague's question in specific?
Well, I think the provisions of actually drilling down and incentives that will be beneficiary to the community from the public and the private sector. We talk about incentives, and sometimes it's in a blanket form. We want to know numbers. We want to know how. We want to understand how the system will capture this thing. And Honorable was talking about the number of persons with disability. All of us are just guessing. We are all guessing. And that's why we need to invest in accurate data of persons with disability. We don't have accurate data of persons with disability. 35 million is guesstimate. We may be much more than that. And that's why we need to invest in accurate data. I was in Lagos, and I was privileged again to meet my friend, the head of the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. And we started talking around that. So we need to know, how will this incentive by law be administered? Thirdly, what how are we going to, what is the assurance that persons with disability will be part of the administration of this law? This is very important, and this is through inclusion. If you don't include us, the committee has made one or two mistakes, which Oyewole admitted. That's why he's holding the town hall meeting. By the way, the committee is paying for it. And I didn't want them to go anywhere other than Hilton, because that's where they take governors and every important person. We are also important. So I insisted, and he approved that he will host this town hall meeting today by 9 o'clock at the Hilton.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Mr. Pele. Data gathering is good to determine the distribution of the peculiar types of disabilities within the community itself. But it could also lead to significant information about those who are economically empowered and those who are not. This is for you, Honorable Dauda. And this question is instructive because since the enactment of the Persons with Disability Law, there's a general consensus, particularly amongst the persons with disability community, that the Act has done very little to end much of the discriminations that they face, nor reduce their limitations in terms of social challenges and particularly economic challenges. So if this data discovers, for instance, that a very significant portion of members of that community are not economically empowered, what may we be missing and losing in our advocacy for inclusion in the tax reform bills?
Yes, thank you very much for that observation. This is one of the reasons why what you're doing now, we really appreciate it, because it's the core part of what is required, which is the sensitization. Because a lot of folks are not aware of this Disability Act 2018 signed by President Buhari. And what the Act talks about is not only protection of PWDs, but also talks about their rights. And then understanding that rights are not given a la carte. Sometimes people have to, most of the time, fight for their rights. So you're right. What about the implementation? To start with, the Act provided for a 5-year moratorium to allow businesses to adjust. Because if you're saying that there's a law of the land today that every person that is PWD must be able to access public buildings. If you're saying that anytime there's recruitment, nothing less than 5% of Nigerians should be recruited, and you're talking about inclusion in all facets of life, it needed time, which was provided by law. Now, since the moratorium is over, the other issue relating to this act is about domiciling the act. And I will seize this opportunity to apply to actually appeal to our governors, that the governors that have not domiciled the laws, please, we would like that you domicile the law in their states. Because what the law also provides for is that there must be an agency for persons with disability, which is the commission. That's available on the federal level, but it's saddled with the implementation of the law. That is the duty of the commission. But in this same law, it didn't provide for strong instruments for them to prosecute offenders. And believe it or not, for folks for this particular large community, the budget was really small for that commission to operate. The budget does have a little over 2 billion naira to do this kind of work we're talking about. So they don't have the resources for enforcement. That's part of it. The other part is legislation. But on the part of the National Assembly, we have been at the floor of the House, moved several motions for enforcement and compliance. And that is actually going on now, at least within our purview. We're talking about the NDAs. And that is also going to be going on for some time. Yes, it's very challenging, but that's not something that we're going to give up on. It requires all of us to participate in this process. But I'm with you that it's justifiable that the community is feeling like that. If right now you are a person on wheelchair and you can't still access public buildings, it's really, really a sad story. So hopefully this trend will continue to go on. One thing on that, still on the tax reform, which can be tied down to your question, is that there is a social protection part of taxation also. For example, what about the sharing formula? We've seen the bill. We've seen how it's going to be shared. But do you know that there's actually a vulnerable trust fund, which is not funded? And we have asked to have the disability trust fund, so that if this is funded like UBEC, like all these other agencies, the Commission will have a lot of fund to implement the Act. Thank you for your observation. I think on our own part, we will not relent. But the main challenge is to have a very effective and functional Commission for Persons with Disability. I appreciate your question.
Right, and I just want to tie this to the drive by the government, the revenue generation drive, right? So how would you balance that? Because on the one hand, and this is for Mr. Pele, on the one hand, this government is very aggressive about generating revenue for obvious reasons, right? If you want to achieve a lot of things, we need more money. Now, the way that the monies are expended, the efficiency and all of that is another conversation. But this government is quite clear on the fact that it's trying to drive revenue generation. So how do you see some of these rebates, perhaps exemptions, some of these proposals you have? Do you see it impacting on the government's revenue generation drive positively or negatively, Mr. Pele?
Currently, I would say positively. Positively because some of the revenues that will come from these incentives and savings can actually be reinvested. You know that the Ministry of Humanitarian has this social investment program, that is ongoing. And I believe that the current administration in Ministry of Humanitarian are very honest and straightforward and are working hard to ensure that the social investment program is redesigned, redirected, refocused, and more productive. So it's an opportunity. There is also a business side of our advocacy on agitation, because where there are good tax incentives and all that, you will find that manufacturers of devices, manufacturers of wheelchair, manufacturers of magnifying glasses may be coming into the country. There are local production, there's no doubt, local producers and production, there's no doubt. But we need more robust, more, a little bit more modern production of these devices and wheelchair. I know that in the country, the wheelchair we produce are still manual. How about electric wheelchairs, which is very expensive, going into millions, So what we are saying in effect is that as much as we are asking for incentives and all that, we also have economic potentials, bearing in mind that when these investors come, they will employ labor, they will eventually pay taxes, even though it will be rebated, so that there's a huge, so in direct answer to your question, Kayode, it will impact positively because the same thing will go back to the most vulnerable and bring them out of poverty. But we are the watchdog of the process. We will keep watching and we will hold those that we need to hold accountable, and we ensure that implementation. The greatest problem, the greatest headache I have is implementation. We have very good laws, we have very good intention, but the action should be on implementation. Implementation is still something we are grappling with. But I mean, with what is happening now, the level of transparency that I'm seeing, within the space where I work, I'm not saying every government level is transparent, but within where I work, you know, I am hopeful. I am very hopeful. I mean,
Mr.
go ahead,
Pele,
sir.
apparently, what you said quite apt, and of course, I'm sure the authorities are listening to make sure that implementation, which is not just within your space, is literally everywhere. Beautiful pieces of legislation, some we don't even know exist, but implementation has always been the bone of contention. But we must thank you so much, and we hope that this pans out for everybody fairly well at the end of the day. Jacob Pele is the CEO and founder of TAF Africa. Mr. Bashiru Daudo is the Chairman, House Committee on Disability Matters. He represents Oshodi Sol of Federal Constituency 1 at the House of Reps. Gentlemen, thank you, and we appreciate you.
Thank you for having us, and thank you, Patrick,
for
the opportunity. Thank you, the team at the Morning Brief.
Thank you, sir. So we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll get to the very next leg of the conversation. Join us again.
So we're talking another leg of this conversation. They're all tied, actually. So we can talk about revenue generation, how government wants to drive, revenue. But in terms of planning, the use of the revenue, procurement, inventory management, and all of that, how well are we doing in that light? And I'm talking for individual businesses and maybe extrapolate for government as well. We're joined on the program by Anthony Onwodi, who's the UK Planning Manager, CEO Onward Transcend, joins us from the UK this morning. You're welcome to the Morning Brief, Ms. Onwodi.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Is it true that we're not the very best planners in this part of the world?
Well, we've got very intelligent people who have the capability to use the resources available to us to execute our plans, in a very intelligible way. But I think the challenge is actually allowing them to put those plans into action. So your previous participants were talking about legislations and using the legislations effectively. So I think it's about utilizing the resources that we have to actually achieve an effective plan, and also understanding the value of having an effective plan. Because some of the challenges we have is understanding the concepts of planning, concept of supply chain, and how can we implement, those principles effectively to bring about a sustainable economy, a sustainable environment. So that's some of the challenges that I see that we have in Nigeria.
There's a whole value chain. I want to pick process optimization because I look at a lot of things and I wonder, we've been at this for decades now, and this is something we should have found better ways to achieve. And I don't want to mention names, but some people see them every day, either in the civil service, the private sector, or individual lives. The fact that we're able to reinvent every time. I think the Japanese call it kaizen. You just keep getting better and better. Talk about governance, for example. Have we been able to optimize that system of governance such that it is more efficient, effective? The United States is going about with Doge, and you can see the pushback even in the United States. So Nigeria's case in particular now, what are those areas we can optimize to better manage our resources, both human and natural resources?
That's a very good question. And you're talking about Kaizen, continuous improvement. These are my key areas that I really am interested both in my job as a UK planning manager, but also in my business in Onward Transcend. So it's about, utilizing those tools that you mentioned, such as Japanese continuous improvement, Six Sigma tools like Kaizen, to help look at areas that are lacking improvement that we can, help optimize. And the challenge, I believe, that we have in Africa is awareness understanding and also the interest to apply some of these techniques. Because when you don't understand the value and the output that you get from applying a continuous improvement methodology or technology, you wouldn't have that interest to apply it. For instance, if you look at the history of technological development in the Western world, let's use automobile for example. Imagine the first automobile that was made and how they've managed to evolve over time to have, efficient, cost-effective, safe vehicles driving on the road. That is a massive change over time. And what has brought about this change is continually looking for opportunities to improve the current system to make it better. And that can be applied in every sector in the supply chain and the value chain. So with looking at, you mentioned Dodge, you mentioned what's happening in the United States, Elon Musk was working with the US president to look at optimizing the government sector. That is even a bit on the high-handed side for a company that is advanced already, in implementing continuous improvement. For Nigeria, we have an opportunity in Africa take baby steps to start to look at how can we make our processes better and what instruments can we put in place, in motion, to begin to educate the people of the importance of continuous improvement. You build roads.
Mr. Just in addition to your thoughts, if we want to bring it home as much as possible for a proper general sense of reference for everyone, so let's talk about the procurement process in itself. I know you've talked about process optimization, which we're trying to land on that. There are two leakages in the system. In fact, the places where we see most corruption from what we've seen in Nigeria by analysts and by everybody who cares to look at how money moves and how money works is when it comes to procurement in terms of inflated amounts, when it comes to the budgets as well. So if you were to advise government on, because we're looking for money as a country, that's why all the reforms are coming in and all of that, given what the administration has said. If you were to advise the government on how to really close that hole, close that gap when it comes to gaming the system or cheating the system because of the loose sense of procurement, maybe the policy is not bad, but the implementation in itself. So I'll give you an example. You see a situation where something is supposed to cost, say, 500 million naira. You can see it for an outrageous amount, 2 billion, 3 billion, because somebody has to settle somebody for somebody to settle somebody for somebody to settle. So it's just a shameful practice that it's been experienced and people have gone to court and all of that. So if you were to help advise, what would be maybe 2, 3 things you would advise?
It's simple. It's easier said than done, but it's simple. I could use one word. It's process, process, process. And when we talk in supply chain, the core 3 elements that we look at is the people, the process, and the machines. So in this case, we're talking about process. For you to close the gap, like you said, on corruption, on greed, on bribery, for instance, and inefficiencies that creates these loopholes, you have to have an optimized, standardized process where you now bring in continuous improvement to make sure that those processes rigid processes that you've put in place is continually improved, investigated, and improved. Kaizen, Pokayoke, and all these beautiful Japanese systems that they've studied over years and improved on, we can begin to learn and to adopt those systems and make it even unique to our environment to suit our way of life. But when I'm talking about process, what do I mean? I mean having a structured process in place to manage the procurement procurement aspect of our governance in Nigeria, and making sure that those processes that you've put in place is rigidly followed. Another thing that helps is technology. So a lot of companies these days are using beautiful technology. I don't want to advertise any tools out there, but there are wonderful tools out there, enterprise resource planning tools that you can use to help manage those processes that you've put in place to help make sure that all those loopholes, all those gaps that manifest when you're having a flexible and not so rigid procurement, it allows for monies to be mishandled, or for monies to move from one one hand to the other hand without proper investigation and visibility. A proper, good, standardized, rigid process put in place will help close that gap, but now supported with continuous improvement to make sure that we keep improving those processes using the right technology, optimization, and then collaboration as well.
All right.
No man is an island.
But there is an increasing, observation, particularly by supply chain experts in Nigeria, that the adoption of some of these things that you have talked about, technology, artificial intelligence, have helped improve industrial processes and perhaps, the administrative efficiency of other types of business components back here in Nigeria, particularly in the last year or two. Are your observations to that effect about Nigeria? And if not, what are the other things that you think Nigeria should adopt in terms of the other important elements required for supply chain efficiency, i.e. infrastructure, to ensure greater results in that economic value chain?
That's a good one. Yes, it is true that we are adopting, in recent times, we're beginning to adopt modern technology, AI, to help us improve our supply chain and value chain processes. But one thing that is key to know is the rate of adoption and how widespread is this adoption. Is one sector is using it, but are we encouraging all the other sectors to know that this is the best approach, and this is the most effective way of doing things? Then you mentioned what else can we do? Another thing that we can do is adaptation of modernized processes, enterprise resource planning, standardization, AI tools. There are a lot of good tools out there, and it's a key element to improving our supply chain.
Mr. Nwadi, perhaps you want to break down some of those terminologies to Nigerians who may not understand. Particularly, what do you mean by enterprise resource planning?
So enterprise resource planning, it's talking about end-to-end supply chain management, and you're looking at all the various elements that is within the supply chain process. You're talking about HR, you're talking about manufacturing, you're talking about the people management, you're talking about machine equipment management, you're talking about managing of logistics aspect. It's what we call in supply chain cradle to grave. So that is from the extraction of the raw material from the ground to the processing and manufacturing of this material. And in more recent time, we know with global warming, we're talking more about sustainability. So we're also talking about how you manage the disposal of these materials, of this finished product, especially when it's products that are slightly harmful to the environment. So that is cradle to grave, and that is it encompasses enterprise resource planning, encompasses the whole process of supply chain management, including the people aspect as well. So there are enterprise resource planning, wonderful enterprise resource planning tools out there. SAP is one, Oracle has its own tool, Microsoft Dynamics, and there are several other tools out there, Kinexes, that can be used to optimize supply chain. But coming back to your question, one other key element is collaboration. So in recent times, since after COVID-19, there's been a study, and I think That study was done by Fujitsu, and it recorded that majority of companies have managed to improve their or recover from the effect of COVID-19 by using these three tools: technology, innovation, and like we mentioned, automation, optimization, continuous improvement, which is key. And maybe if time in another segment, I would really like to dive into continuous improvement, because that is really a key element that we lack in Africa and Nigeria. And then collaboration, because I was about to land on collaboration. So when you talk about collaboration, you're talking about best practice, gaining best practice information.
Almost, thank you so much.
You're talking about identifying best practices, working with Nigerians in the diaspora like myself and other people that have had the opportunity to have a global exposure on supply chain management, and learning from them on how you can utilize the wonderful intellectual and resources that we have in the country to better make our resources and work effectively for us as a country.
We must thank you so much on your perspective. Apparently, this is required. How efficient, how possible this can be, especially for me, especially in the public sector, which is where we need to cut a lot of waste and streamline these processes so we can get a good return for all our monies at the end of the day. Anthony Nwadi is the UK-based planning manager and the CEO of Onward Transcend. He joined us via Zoom from the United Kingdom. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll get to something going on in Benue State as far as the politics interwoven around the judiciary is concerned. Join us again.
Welcome back. So Benue State is in our line of vision yet again for perhaps the 18th time in the last couple of weeks. This time around, it has to do with what seems to be a brewing constitutional crisis in the state polity following the recommendation of the suspension of the state chief judge by the State House of Assembly. And don't forget that that also elicited the suspension of 13 other lawmakers who opposed the suspension of the state chief judge. Of course, we heard the speaker say that, during the proceedings, that some of them even raised both hands to endorse the recommendation of the suspension of the state chief judge. But the other lawmakers have insisted that they are opposed to it because they did not follow the constitution, the laid down procedure for the removal of the state chief judge. And we also know that the NJC has also made its position clear, that the State Assembly has not followed the constitution as far as the removal of the state chief judge is concerned. Let's get perspectives on this matter, and joining us on the program is Senate Minority Leader Senator Abba Patrick Moro to weigh in on this. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Senator Moro, on the program.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be with you.
So let's start with your gleanings, your perception of what the State House of Assembly has done. It has hinged its decision on Section 212 of the Constitution, that it has stayed within its rightful place to remove the state chief judge. What are your thoughts on this?
The Constitution, as you're well aware, is the ground norm of the nation. That is the law, the supreme law of the land. And various authorities, institutions, have said that the State House of Assembly has not followed the laid down provisions of the Constitution. And so I stand by that conclusion, because if you look at what transpired on the day in question, you will agree with me that the whole process was hurriedly undertaken by the State House of Assembly, and in the process, certain fundamental procedures were not followed. If you want to look at it, yes, Section 292 1A2 provides that the state governor can remove the state chief judge if he is found infirm mentally or physically, or as a result of misconduct or the contravention of the Code of Conduct Act. And so, if you look at it from that perspective, it presupposes that you must determine that this man is incapable of functioning as a state chief judge as a result of those conditions. And Section B of the same Section 292 provides that the state governor can only remove the state chief judge on the recommendation of the National Judicial Council. And that should be, in the first place, upon the determination that the man is no longer fit to be in that office. These conditions have not been met. And let me state clearly here that this Constitution has several provisions that deal with the same subject matter. And you cannot read one section in isolation of the other. And so, for the State House of Assembly to hinge its action on Section 21A2 and recommend or address the governor to remove the state chief judge, certainly is like putting the cart before the horse. And if you are following carefully the events in Benue State, you also want to recall that only yesterday, the chief press secretary of the governor said that they have submitted the allegations against the chief judge to the National Judicial Council to take disciplinary action against the state chief judge. And like I said, that is like putting the cart before the horse, because that is what they should have done in the first place. They should have, either the House of Assembly or the National Judicial Council, should have ordinarily carried out an investigation of the allegations against the state chief judge and come to the conclusion that he's guilty before they recommend his removal. In this case, this was not done, and it's unacceptable.
So, Senator Moro, let's try to understand again a bit further what is happening within the State Assembly itself, because one of the House leaders speaking on our sister program just last Friday was saying that the other 13 members who are now suspended, some of them had voted, but perhaps because some of their paymasters reached out to them later and they were under pressure, that was why they now organized a counter press conference later on to state their position that they're opposed to the suspension of the state chief judge. What are your thoughts on these seeming political undertone that is coloring the now controversial suspension of the state chief judge?
Let me tell you, it's like the kettle calling the pot black. They too, we are under pressure to suspend the state chief judge. And from the information that is available to us on the public domain now, they were even alleged to have been compromised. And so, if 13 members say, look, we didn't vote, there is no evidence before us here to show that they voted. The result that we have is simply that they have 23 people who have voted to remove the state chief judge, which is being economical with the truth. Because the truth of the matter, from the information in the public domain, is that on that day, only 31 members were in attendance in the House of Assembly to attend the plenary. And from what is available to us on the public domain now, 13 of them say, no, we didn't vote. They just put our name there. And look, let me tell you, attendance register of members who have come to attend the plenary is not synonymous with voting records. So let the majority leader or whoever is saying that from both sides of his mouth come forward with the record of the proceedings of that day and show that 23 members voted. In any case, even if 23 members voted without conceding that, where are the others? What is the record of the others who didn't vote? Where is the record of anybody who abstained? Because ordinarily, the speaker, as the presiding officer, wouldn't vote unless there is a tie. And so, mathematically, if you take away 13 plus the speaker who didn't vote from the people that attended the plenary that day, what do you have? You don't have the number. So, ab initio, that motion had failed. Because if you don't have 2/3 from any record that is available to us, then certainly that motion has failed. And there shouldn't have been a recommendation on the failed motion to the governor for him to remove the state chief judge. In any case, if you look at section 271, the National Judicial Council recommends the appointment of a chief judge. The National Judicial Council, by the same section, exercises disciplinary control over judges appointed by either the president or the governor. And so in this case, the National Judicial Council was not informed, was not involved, and didn't participate in the process. And so, ab initio, therefore, any action that had been taken on the chief judge on that fateful day certainly is unconstitutional and illegal.
All right, Senator Morrow, let's expand it a bit further, because it's difficult to believe that lawmakers or the government that has an attorney general and the lawmakers for and against all of this do not understand the constitutional process. Because according to the Constitution, whether you're quoting 271, 292, all of the section that has to do with this law, there's a tripartite role, if you will, between the governor, NJC, and the State House of Assembly. One will make recommendation, which will get the confirmation or disapproval by the House of Assembly. So when you look at the entire spectrum, it looks like implicitly NJC hires and fires, because if NJC say go, you cannot say I can't go. If NJC stay, you cannot say you can't stay. But now, what has happened has happened. So my question is, one, putting the cart before the horse. That's on one hand. On the other hand, not being able to put together a number of quorum to even be able to exercise, accepting without conceding that they even got the NJC's approval. What do you think is really playing out here? What is the big picture that we're not seeing here?
Well, I think that from what has come out very clearly from the actions of the governor and the government of Benue State, as soon as that recommendation was made, the issues that were raised before the State House of Assembly were not investigated. There's no record that they were investigated. And don't forget that local government elections just took place in Benue State. And from all indications, from what people say and have seen, there was no election. There were just selections of persons by the government. And this issue is being challenged in a tribunal. Hurriedly, after purportedly removing the state chief judge, the government went and heaped piles of sand in the entrance of the state high court to prevent the state chief judge from entering his office, to prevent the electoral tribunal from sitting. And in addition to that, from information available to us, the whole place was barricaded by thugs that honestly prevented any activity on that day. And so, if you look at it from that perspective, and if you look at it from the perspective of the utterances of the state chief judge, he said that he was pressured, excuse me, to put particular judges on the tribunal, and that he refused the pressure and appointed people that, in his opinion, would be able to dispense justice. And that from that day, he had become enemy number one of the governor. And so what is playing out, therefore, definitely is more than meets the eye in the circumstances.
And tomorrow, that means the NJC has given their position, and I'm sure that. But as it's, let's say, before we go to the next leg, that has to do with security from where you sit. What is the NJC has said that Justice Ikpambese remains the chief judge of the state. But from what you know and what you're hearing, is the government relating with the chief judge? Has the chief judge resumed his duty? Is he doing his job without being stopped or limited by anyone?
Well, I do know that the chief judge is going about his duties. Apparently, by yesterday, he attended some functions, even though outside the High Court. And on this matter, virtually all the High Court judges in Benue State and people of goodwill agree that the chief judge remains the chief judge. And like you said, the NJC has said the chief judge remains the chief judge of Benue State. And so anybody that is going to act contrary to that directive from the NJC certainly is going against the law. And definitely at the appropriate time, the law will take its normal course. And so for now, the tribunal sat, and of course they requested the chairman of the tribunal to give an adjournment because of insecurity. And you know, the tribunal is a court of special concern because they have 180 days within which to determine all cases before them. And I can tell you from what is unfolding now that the tactics of the state governor and the government of Benue State is to cleverly ensure that the tribunal does not finish its case before the 180 days. And of course, if the tribunal fails to finish its job within the 180 days, the case is dead at that level. And so I think all these things point to the fact that at the center of all this impasse is the local government election and the cases before the tribunal. They want to scuttle it. They want to make sure that justice is not served. And the first port of call, of course, is to antagonize the state chief judge, who is responsible for appointing tribunal judges. I hope sincerely that we will be able to cross this impasse very quickly, because it will be a very serious dent on our judicial system. It will be a very big dent on our democracy. And I can assure you that with the unfolding scenario, the National Assembly certainly will make proposals for the amendment of the Constitution or the Electoral Act so as to remove this ugly situation where somebody can hold the whole tribunal to ransom, ensure that 180 days passes and there is no judgment in the cases before them.
That's an interesting dimension to this conversation, with a lot of implications that we can even begin to talk about, and we'll dedicate an entire hour to it and we would not have exhausted it. But some would say that where Benue is concerned, to other matters now, that there are bigger fish to fry besides this intractable political crisis within either the state government or the political party, the leading political party in the state. Bigger fish in terms of security. Senator Moro, what are your thoughts on the handling of security matters in the state? The state government says it is not overwhelmed, that it is in control of the situation, but stories from Benue are to the contrary. What exactly is going on from where you stand?
That is the crux of the matter. That is the crux of the matter, that many concerned Benue citizens, including those of us here, are worried that the governor is misplacing priorities. Like you have rightly noted, our people are being killed by the day. We have several internally displaced persons in Benue State that have not been assisted to go back to their ancestral homes. As a result of this general insecurity in Benue State, our food security is at stake. Lives are being lost by the day. Kidnapping is on the rise. And you don't find a state governor issuing even statements of concern, let alone visit these areas and these scenes of these ugly situations. And here we are, haggling over political positions. And so that is what you find when an individual prizes his personal interest above the common good. And it's very sad and unfortunate that it is happening in Benue State. Like you have rightly noted, the governor is confronting all fights from all directions. It's either he's fighting with his political party, or he's fighting with members of his political party, or he's fighting imaginary enemies around the place, and accusing people of being responsible for wanting to destabilize the state. Meanwhile, the unconstitutional acts, the illegal acts of the governor, are a foundation for the instability that is claiming to be unfolding in Benue State.
But Senator Moro,
I think that... Yeah.
Some would say that, you know, his political rival is contending the position of leader of the party in the state with him, and they're not allowing him, you know, to make decisions as the leader of the party. Some say it's a rivalry between him and the secretary of the state government. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, the whole idea of leadership is an ego journey that is unnecessary. He is governor of Benue State, for crying out loud. What leadership does he need anymore? He's in charge of the whole state. Everything in the state is under him. Condensing these things, putting them together, creating synergy and harmony for the development and progress of Benue State is his responsibility. So why is he stoking fights? It's unnecessary. The SGF is in Abuja here, so pretending over government affairs here. He is in Benue, so pretending over the affairs of Benue, the security of lives and property of the Benue people, the governance of the Benue people. So why is he going on the ego journey of leader of party, leader of party? As it is now, given what is unfolding in Benue State, can he combine the management of the party with the management of Benue State and the government? As things are now, from all these things that have been happening, have you heard the Attorney General of Benue State coming out to issue a legal opinion? Instead, is there these social media people, the chief press secretary, that are issuing statements that are far from the legal implications of what is on ground. And that tells you the crisis that is in Benue State, that the Attorney General of Benue State, who should be able to come up with an opinion either to NJSC or to the Benue public or the Nigerian public, has maintained a very golden silence.
Senator Moro, apparently there's a lot of work.
And so doesn't that make any sense to anybody here?
Senator Moro, apparently there's a lot of work that the elders have to come into the room to move the state forward. But as in closing, let's leave Benue for a moment to go to the National Assembly. You're the leader of the opposition. Sometimes Nigerians have blamed the opposition for being ineffective, for not standing up for them when it comes to certain maybe pieces of legislation. Sometimes people have accused you and your colleagues of being rubber-stamped. I know you're familiar with some of these names, but where I'm going to with all of this is the fact that, first, I would like you to speak to what is going on within your political party. I know that the Senate President once in a while teases you and some of your colleagues as to which faction of the PDP do you belong to. Is there a faction in the PDP? One. On the other hand, the issue that involves Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, when she was talking about how she's not been given opportunity to speak, and then changing her statement, her voice will be shut down even further. How much is you as a leader of the opposition defending your people and defending, I mean your people now, your members of your party, and defending the people of Nigeria when, for instance, the APC comes with legislation that you feel that doesn't sit down well with the people?
Well, thank you very much. And like you said, and has been said much earlier, some of these issues require long times for us to dissect very seriously some of the things that are on the table. But here we are, rubber stamp. I was in the 9th Senate, we were called rubber stamp. I'm in the 10th Senate, we are called rubber stamp by a session of the Nigerian media and community. And it is simply the fact that we are not doing what they want us to do. And I asked somebody, what is a rubber stamp? The Nigerian people have elected a government. The government is bringing out proposals for us to scrutinize and approve policies for moving Nigeria forward. And to the best of my knowledge, that is exactly what we're doing. I know that in certain clients, and even in Nigeria, there has always been call, impeach the president, impeach the person here, impeach that person here, raising the temperature of politics unnecessarily. I think that what many people do not know is that the result of some of the things that you are seeing here is a result of our activities within the system, synergizing, trying to accommodate bipartisan positions, and coming out with policies that at least are implementable, that seek to mitigate the predicament that we find ourselves in here. And so, to the other leg of your question, I think that PDP at the moment has its own share of crisis. It's not unique to PDP. What is happening in PDP is happening in APC. What is happening in PDP is happening in Labour Party. That is to tell you the fragility of our democracy, the fragility of our party system. It's a very unfortunate development, but I can tell you that we are working very seriously towards ensuring some level of understanding amongst the opposing tendencies of the political party, or the PDP as it were. Of course, understandably, the Senate President once in a while talks about what faction, what this and the rest of them. Yes, of course, he can say that because of the contending tendencies within the PDP. But like I always point out, there are also contending tendencies in the APC. But he is the presiding officer. I cannot ask him at the floor of the Senate, which faction do you belong in APC and the rest of them? It will be a joke taken too far. Well, I can tell you that we're working seriously towards creating some level of harmony in the system so that we don't raise the temperature, don't raise the tension unnecessarily. I think Nigerians are hurting enough than to come to terms with political leaders haggling and confronting themselves unnecessarily. For Natasha and the Senate President, if you saw what transpired on that day, you would have watched that I was moving between the Senate President and Senator Natasha to calm the situation. There are rules, but there are exceptions. And to every rule, there are always exceptions. And I can assure you that we are taking steps to ensure that there is some level of understanding between not just Senator Natasha and the Senate President, but all senators and the Senate President.
All right, Senator Moro, on your comment about telling the Senate President that which faction does he belong to. Perhaps, besides it, you know, being a joke taking too far, it just might earn you a suspension, as we have seen typically in the recent past in the Senate. It's been an interesting time having this conversation with you, sir. We've been talking with Senator Abba Patrick Moro, the Senate Minority Leader and Senator representing Benue South Senatorial District. Thank you so much, sir, for your time on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And from here, we're staying with the constitutional crisis in Benue State, but we'll be taking legal perspectives now. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break.
Mr. Victor Giwa joins us now to give legal perspective to the issue of the Chief Judge of Benue State and the issues around it. Just as a background, we've said it before, there was a House of Assembly voting to remove the chief judge based on some allegations leveled against him. But the NJC has come out to say, no, you don't have that right. Look at the laws, it's very clear. You can't really move forward back and forth without us. And they say he remains the chief judge. Let's bring in Mr. Giwa. Mr. Giwa, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
From where you sit as a legal practitioner, looking into Benue State, what do you see playing out here?
Well, thank you very much. Like your introduction, I'm a legal practitioner. I'll be looking at it from the prism of the law, of the Constitution. So I will be speaking directly on the Constitution and try to make sense of what the Constitution says. Like Jerome Frank, one of the best brain in the United States of America, he said, let us elucidate the obvious before we obliterate the obscure. Let us elucidate the obvious before we obliterate the obscure. So let us look at the sections of the Constitution and try to make a sense out of what it says. Now, firstly, the removal of judicial officer is contained under Section 292. And so as a lawyer, whatever is happening in Benue State, I will be looking at it from the prism of the Constitution. I'm not from Benue State, so I'm just a lawyer. Now, Section 292(1) says that the judicial officers shall not be removed from their office or appointment before their age of retirement, except in certain circumstances. That is Section 292(1). It now goes on to have a paragraph, paragraph A. And paragraph A has two subsections, Roman figure I and Roman figure II. There was a mistake on the grading. So Roman figure I starts from the Chief Justice of Nigeria. He said, so these persons as follows, except, if I read it again, he said, a judicial officer shall not be removed from office or his appointment before his retirement age, except in certain circumstances as 1, for the CJN, the President of the Court of Appeal, he listed paragraph 1. Paragraph 2, which is the area of concentration in this case, he said the CJ, the Chief Judge of the State, the Grand Cadi of the state, or the President of the Customary Court of Appeal of a state, by the governor, acting on the address, supported by 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly of the state, praying for the removal, as a result of him not being able to, his inability to discharge his function or appointment, with unreasoned sending from infirmity of the mind or of the body, or misconduct, or contravention of the code of conduct. Now, that is paragraph A. And I think this is where the confusion is coming from. Paragraph B of Section 292 now made a very interesting comment. And if you read paragraph B, it says, in any case, and that is where I think people have misinterpreted these two sections. Now, there is a paragraph A that has enlisted what if the removal of what he feels is the judicial officer. He now went further to say in paragraph B, and he started with a phrase, in any case, other than those in which paragraph A does not, the paragraph A subsection applies, other than those that subsection A applies. So the paragraph in section B says that while you can remove the CJ as stated in paragraph A, 1 and 2, section B says, in any case other than those in which paragraph A subsection apply, the president or in any case the governor shall remove the judicial officer on the recommendation of the National Judicial Commission. Now, in the interpretation of statute, there's a provision that says expressio unios ex exclusio ulteriors. The express mention of one is the exclusion of the other. So section 292A, paragraph 1 and 2 is an independent section. So it has stated that for the removal of a chief judge of a state, the president of the grand county of a state, and the president of the customary court, that the governor of a state, in an address supported by 2/3 majority, can remove the chief judge. So that is what paragraph A is saying. Paragraph B is not saying that for those, because chief judges are not only the judicial officers. The chief justice of the federation, president of the court of appeal, chief judge of the state, grand county of the state, president of the customary court of the state are not only the judicial officers. And a judge of a state high court is a judicial officer. So section B now started dealing with how you can deal with those ones that have not been mentioned in subsection 292A, and that is why the starting paragraph in paragraph B says, in any case other than those in which paragraph A subsection do not apply, that paragraph A subsection applies. In any case other than those, that's paragraph A subsection applies. This is the way to remove them. So it has distinguished between the removal of a chief judge and a removal of other judicial officers that are not in the position of the chief judge, grand county of the state, or president of the customary court of appeal of the state, as stated in the paragraph.
So the Constitution is quite clear, and there's no basis for what State Assembly members are hinging their decision on. So in summary, there is no constitutional crisis in the Benue State Assembly, as we may assume, over this purported suspension of the state chief judge. We'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Victor Giwa, Mr. Giwa Victor, a legal practitioner who has joined us from our Abuja studio on this very important conversation. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so from here, we go to yet another very interesting topic. It's a story of resilience in the face of very, very challenging circumstance. We have the inspiring journey of a young man who came from insurgency to becoming an aerospace engineer. Stay with us for this conversation. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So it's time now to tell you the story of someone we choose to call a golden boy. He's increasingly getting that tag to stick. Let's welcome Mohammed Haruna Hamza, an aerospace engineer who joins us via Zoom from South Korea. Hello, Mohammed. It's good to see you. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Hello. Thank you for having me. And I'm very pleased to be here with you today.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. In fact, I'm very excited.
And we're excited to have you as well. So let's start from the very beginning, before you became an aerospace engineer. Tell us your story of displacement and what happened before the displacement.
Okay, so I was born in a small, in a local government area of Yobe State called Potiskum, to a family of 8 children, and I was the 7th. And I was pretty much from a very decent family. My dad used to be a primary school teacher, but after furthering his education, he rose to be a lecturer and also a librarian at the College of Administrative and Business Studies in Yobe State. While my mom, until her retirement, she rose from being a primary school teacher to the headmistress. So my beginning was pretty much very decent and quiet until the start of the religious extremism that started between 1994 to 2004 in Potiskum area, where we saw many churches, schools, and many people killed in those insurgency. So as a student at that time in primary school, I used to attend a missionary school that was located in the premises of a church. So we saw our school, threatened and our lives being threatened. And my elder brother, who at that time had gotten employed into a company in Lagos State, came down in 2008 for his wedding. And upon deliberation with his wife, they decided that, in order to give me a chance at life and also to pursue my dreams, having seen my hard work and all that, decided that it would be best if I follow them to Lagos to enroll in a secondary school there. So upon moving down to Lagos, just a few months after, the official Boko Haram insurgency, which we know of today, fully came into limelight, seeing a lot of people, including my family, getting displaced. And my family literally had to abandon everything at an instant. All our, properties, jobs, and everything. And the only place and refuge we had at that time was my brother's house, who at that time was based in Lagos State. So all my family, the whole 8 of us, including my parents, all flew to Lagos. And after some, few deliberations, my dad thought it's impossible and not sustainable for us to be there since there was nothing to do. And all of us had to abandon, my siblings had to abandon their schools and move to that side. So after some time, my dad and my mom had to move down to Jos Plateau State, where they were able to rent a house. And that is where they've been based until the present day. And I and my younger sister had to remain in Lagos under the supervision and mentorship of my elder brother, who toiled day and night to work and earn money and send us to secondary school. So I finished my secondary school from Air Force Comprehensive School at Ibadan, after which I briefly got admitted into University of Nigeria in Nsukka. While being there, I had a clear vision and a clear dream to become an aerospace engineer. But due to the lack of opportunities in Nigeria, most especially in the field of aerospace engineering, I sought to looking outside for scholarships. And in 2016, I was selected by the South Korean government among a pool of thousands of applicants to pursue my degree in aerospace engineering under a fully funded scholarship in South Korea. And due to my excellent record, they were able to expand that scholarship from just not only undergraduate study, but also towards master's degree and currently to PhD level.
Wow, so you're doing your PhD as we speak?
Yes, I am currently enrolled in a PhD program, a fully funded PhD program in South Korea here.
Oh, wow, that's quite an inspiring story from where you're coming from. So before we let you go, are you planning to come back to Nigeria to contribute, or you want to give it to South Korea for a bit before you come back? Let's be clear.
Of course. Like I'm always patriotic about my country and where I'm from. I feel like I've gotten to a place where even though I give credit to South Korea for believing in my talent, but I also give credit to Nigeria and the Nigerian system for instilling in me the morals and the drive and the passion for to never give up and be where I am today. So I intend to go back to Nigeria and to work side by side with both the Nigerian Air Force, because my research field right now in aerospace has to do with surveillance, remote sensing from space, satellite development, and also like, drones, technology, and all that. So I intend to go and apply my own national quota to the contribution and development of Nigerian aerospace industry, and also to be inspiration to people like me.
And just before we let you go, there's still a big concern about insecurity, particularly in Nigeria's northwest, about radicalism and somehow the increasing recruitment into Boko Haram. What would you say to the young people who are in Nigeria's north right now, about their dreams, or those who are being tempted to become radicalized?
So one thing I would say is there is a lot of negative stereotype towards the Nigerian government by the youth, and that leads them to give up because they lack the hope in their dreams. So what I would like to tell them is to never give up. If there seems not to be hope back home, they should always think of opportunities in several places. For example, I owe my credit and to the fact that I was able to move down south side towards Lagos, Ibadan to study. So they should never give up. We should always strive to look for another opportunity, because we will always be left with this choice in life to succeed. So they should look up to people who have strived to be better. In my life, I've had my brother who I always looked up to. So the youth should never give up, but strive to always be better and always cling to an optimum of hope.
All right. Thank you so much, Mohammed Aruna. And by the way, you're also the first African to deliver a commencement speech at your graduation, I believe, in South Korea.
Yes, that is right. It was an incredible moment, a moment of pride, where I could reflect and, hold the Nigerian flag so high. Everywhere, everybody here in South Korea is so amazed by that, and because of that, Nigeria, I believe, is now on the map here in Asia.
All right. Thank you so much, Mohammed Haruna Hamza, aerospace engineer, who joins us today via Zoom from South Korea. We'll continue to tell your story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, so let's get to the other leg of the conversation before we wrap up the show. And that has to do with what you're saying with the video emerging showing the Nigerian Ferry youth leader begging for some money as ransom, given that he's in the hands of kidnappers. This is coming from Papi London, who is reacting to this particular story. So I can imagine how traumatizing this experience must be for the young man and his family. God, I beg you. So that's the thoughts of Nigerians as far as that is concerned. We wish we had time to show you that video. Bukola.
This next one is from Ijaya, who says, the video is depressing. The police should do something about this. He must be rescued alive.
That is the only option, actually. He has to be rescued. Frederick Omoyo says the terrorists recorded the video, posted it on social media, and the security agencies could not track the SIM card registration. Was the registration en route? Even with registration, it ought to be tracked. That's a big question. We've had this conversation over and again. Former Minister of Communication and all of that. But I understand that's much we can take as far as the trends, what you're saying on social media. But don't forget to keep them coming as much as possible. We'll amplify your thoughts on our WhatsApp page, on our WhatsApp number, messages and videos only. But you can post on X. CTV Morning Brief is the hashtag. Thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.
And the week is still young, is unfolding. We'll be back again tomorrow. But don't forget, Sunrise Daily is up next. Stay with Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
Bye-bye.